Dewey. Quick, something quick. Awesome, thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to second meeting of January already. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, and like all of our public meetings, we are streaming live on our City of Madison YouTube channel and archiving it there for later viewing. Clerk, may we have a roll call?
Sure. Carl Eaglin.
Here.
Bob Courtney.
Here.
Dave Carlo.
Here.
Board, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from Thursday, January the 9th? If so, please make a motion to approve such minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to approval of claims.
Mayor, I've had an opportunity to review the claims, and we have two sets of claims today, one for the general claim and another for the payroll. And I'll make a motion that the claims be approved as submitted.
I'll second David's motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on, no adjustments. Moving on to new business, it'll be insurance renewals. Mindy, Deputy Mayor.
Good morning, Board. It's time for the annual insurance renewal.
Do we have to?
Well, yes.
Yes,
So,
we do.
I'm going to introduce the team we have to talk to you about insurance, because it's going to be a little bit unusual what we're going to do today. Instead of just asking you to renew a package, there's some things we need to chat about. So I'm going to introduce Greg and Katrina. She always tries to stay in the chair. And then the group from Gregory and Arpel that can help explain the situation with our package and where we are. And then at the end, I can come back up and clarify what the request will be from you.
All right, thank you, Mindy.
Hello, Board. Thank you for having us.
Good morning, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back, always. So, Greg Goodnight with Gardner Insurance. As Mindy outlined, we are renewing or offering renewal for the property and casualty, cyber liability, crime, animal mortality policies that are in force expiring 1/24. So before we dive into proposal, you should have, in any old proposals, Mr. Mayor, that you have, I brought a new one and more revised there in front of you. So I wanted to talk about market conditions and the marketing efforts before we kind of dive into the proposal itself. So in the current market, it's very challenged. It's a hard market specifically driven by property. Obviously, when you're talking about public entity, you're always looking at a volatile liability marketplace. So those things have not changed, but the property is really driving a lot of what we're seeing with increases. Why is that? It's the next question typically. Cost of loss and frequency of loss. It's a pretty bad equation when you talk about what's driving the cost to the insurer for payment of claims. City has done an excellent job with their loss history. So historically, with the city's loss history, it's very marketable. That is still the case. The difference is the expectation with that marketability in today's world versus 4 or 5 years ago. It's very different. So in the past, we could expect in the cities historically, as we've served the city, you can kind of see a cyclical 3 to 5, 7-year relationship with an insurer, which, you know, as things kind of grow, we bring the market into place and competition wins and the city wins for their performance and so forth. The last 4 years in particular, we've sent this account out to market every single year. It's very taxing on everyone involved, but necessary. So with that being said, I want to thank the city. Mindy's done an awful lot of work. All the department heads for their work, just so responsive, so knowledgeable of their departments. That helps us do our job better. Katrina Bell, should take a bow. She's amazing. I think everybody knows that works with her. That's the case. So that's kind of the marketing efforts. Where we went to, I'm going to let kind of are the market conditions. So what we're seeing now as the new normal, unfortunately that term I hate to use, but there's some truth to it. You know, that 10% increase year over year is kind of flat in today's world. Now, you got to keep in mind that the property inflation and so forth is kind of there, so exposures tend to grow with most public entities. City's no different. We'll walk through that at the end of the proposal with property and vehicle, and just the cost to replace these items is higher because of the property inflation, the environment we're in. So the marketing efforts that we took this year, again, 4 years now of sending it completely out to the market and accessing what we can. So the incumbents, so Trident on your liability and Chubb on your property, has offered a renewal this year, which is always good. The alternative is that they've sent a non-renewal notice due to losses or whatever the case might be. So that they are offering. We've also brought into the mix selective insurance for both property and liability, and we'll walk through the combinations there, potentially pairing that with Chubb, which is going to be our recommendation. And then also Travelers was in the mix. You're not going to see them on the proposal with the exception of the crime policy. But Travelers also was reviewing the account. And now they've insured the city in the past, previous to, it probably goes back 12 or 13 years that they insured the city. It's been longer than that, actually, probably 16 or 17 years at this point. But Travelers did have a relationship with the city in the past. And so they did review the account. They liked what they saw. That was part of the marketing efforts. Again, I'll let Andy kind of speak to that a little further on his end of things. But that was an important factor, and they're still interested in. So the more relationships or markets we can bring into the mix, we always want to keep them engaged. City is performing very well from a loss experience perspective. The controls, the HR, risk control that's happening, the SOPs, all those things are very beneficial to the marketability when we present this to an insurer. So again, the result might look a little different from the cost perspective, maybe even in some cases the coverage that they're pulling away from, but the city is performing very well. The alternatives are not good in today's world. Even the good is not good, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what we're seeing from a historical perspective. Andy, do you want to add to the marketing?
Yeah, so naturally, we serve public entities throughout the state of Indiana, cities, counties, and towns. Not that we're talking about counties, but exactly what Greg was talking about, the litigious climate in our communities, plaintiff attorneys maximizing law enforcement situations, asking for policy limits. We've had, for the first time in my 35 years, a public entity in the state of Indiana breach tort limits. Again, that's more of a county perspective. From counties, there's only about 2 insurance companies willing to even consider a county, and mainly because of the jail exposures, things of that nature. Cities and towns are a little bit better, and that's why we could create this competitive environment internally between Trident, Chubb, Selective, and potentially Travelers. 2 of those carriers came to terms. Selective has been a player. One of the benefits for the city about Selective, and probably one of the main reasons why we'd be recommending them, is you guys have been insured with a number of carriers through the years. You might remember One Beacon or Intact Government Risk. They're gone. We've had a complete consolidation in the market where these public entity carriers have completely exited the public entity space. Those are people's jobs, to insure public entities, and they're no longer around. So we've had a contraction of the marketplace with the number of carriers willing to do it. So the one thing about those carriers as opposed to Selective is, the One Beacons, the Brit National, these carriers that have exited the market, that's all they did for a living, are public entities. Selective, while they do public entities, that's not their main bread and butter. They're very good at public entities, but that's not an active, and only the best of the best will they even consider. City of Madison being a prime example. So what we've talked to Greg and Katrina about is, hopefully nobody has a crystal ball and all that. Hopefully this is a carrier the city can grow with, bank on it, be there, stable relationship for years to come. So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you, Andy, appreciate it.
Any questions on our the marketing, the efforts before we jump into proposal.
You want to just talk a little bit about, I know where we're going, right, because we talked the other day, it's about the increase in the costs, and as Andy was just talking about, the contraction of the market, so when you have fewer providers in the marketplace, that right there is going to be a concern. But, how much role does all of the, not only the litigation, but the casualties that we're all experiencing statewide and across the country impacting what these carriers, a limited number of carriers who are in the marketplace, what they're doing and what they're willing to insure us for at what cost? Because we are transferring our risk onto someone else, this is all about insurance, right? It's risk transfer, and then they are managing their risk at the same time. So you want to talk about the fact that we just had a lot of insured losses that's rolling into this year as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, we're all sharing risk, and I've always kind of make the statement when we have someone exit that a company and a carrier and a program isn't leaving because they're profitable. And so, where they're losing that is in the cost of claims, and there are other areas, but ultimately the cost of claims is what is driving that. And so when we look at the environment, the natural disasters that we're all experiencing, just the tragedy out in California, for example, the hurricane season of last year, the tornado that came through Jefferson County, 3/15 of last year, I had many, many risks. And the more local, the more quickly you feel the impact. But at the end of the day, all of those things go into the sharing of the risk. And the larger that the public entities, for example, are in a space that it comes in and you share that a little bit sooner because of, there's thousands of households with a homeowner, but as far as public entities, there's a lot fewer numbers there. So again, you're more directly sharing that risk with your neighbors, adjoining partners, whether it be counties. In public entity space, a lot of these insurers also insure school systems, for example. So again, the same carrier is in that same space. So again, all that has an impact on the competitive environment, who is in that environment, who is able to properly insure. And so what you see there with them pulling back from that is coverage changes, terms, condition changes, which there are a few this year we're going to deliver, even with the expiring carriers, as to where they come in a different place this year. Obviously, premium is one area where they can reduce their risk and you're taking more, such as higher deductible, maybe mandated, maybe the cost to carry the lower is now prohibitive. So there are a lot of different ways that in this hard market the carrier tries to reduce their risk. And again, just in general, the lack of competition is a challenge because they know that, and they know that there isn't anyone else that will look at a risk. So again, that expectation where I started when we market is to have multiple options is a huge credit to the city. Not everyone has that. A lot don't have that in today's marketplace. So, and Andy said, counties are challenged more than the cities are at this point, but this particular city does an awful lot. We all know that, which we're all proud of that. But there's a lot of exposure that goes along with that, from the law enforcement to the parks to just the general operations, water, sewer, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that the city does. So again, every carrier has a different appetite. They might not like this particular exposure or that. So that can even further limit, what you do. And that's just in general, and that's always been the case. But now you have less insurers engaged, and those conversations we're having and Andy's having on the backside of that sound very different, and they're much less willing to compromise because it is what it is. They have to be in certain places, for their own profitability and stability moving forward. And obviously we want stability so we can build those historic relationships we have for the city, which, again, on average, I think it was a couple years ago when this all really started to show that the yesteryear is now gone, how we manage these accounts and what our expectation is. And we would always say 3 to 5 years before we even, if all things were good. That's no longer the case. Like I said, it's an every year get it out to the market and find where the best terms exist. But on average, it was about 7 to 8 years that the city was historically, and we've served the city for almost 45 years. So it's probably about 42, the best we can tell. So, in that time period, there was a historical norm that's no longer the norm in the last 4 or 5. And
It's a new norm.
It's the new norm. Again, that term comes up a lot, but that's no different in insurance than it is anywhere and everywhere else. The other thing that's kind of out there on a broader scale in our industry is, the personal lines to the public entities. If you look at that whole space, theoretically, personal lines has been heavily impacted, and most people are seeing similar type of percentage increases on a day in and day out basis. Again, no losses, all things are good. What happened? I did nothing wrong. That kind of, historically, they were not seeing those things, and again, that's the new norm. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Do
thank
wanna
you
add
for
to
all that background, and it is the new norm. I mean, the earth is always shifting under our feet now.
Mayor, just expanding just a little bit, I mean, you talk about these carriers, the contraction of the market, the carriers that are leaving the market, you can trace really to three things. It's the law enforcement exposure, and it's hard darn work being a police officer or a sheriff deputy these days. I understand, I have a lot of empathy, the standards that they're held to after an incident, but the simple fact of the matter that these plaintiff attorneys are giving the free will to demand policy limits and an empathetic judicial system allowing it, kept a lot of these insurance companies from even being able to price accordingly, let alone deductibles and all that kind of stuff. As Greg touched on too, the property, for all the things that we've seen on TV, read about, experienced, has just been crushing. Here in Indiana or the Midwest, specifically, wind hail is one of the perils that all these property insurance companies are concerned about. Chubb no different. We're seeing, higher wind hail deductibles. You'll hear a term AOP. That means all other perils: fire, theft, vandalism. Wind hail is so severe it carries its own deductible. Not in this city's case, but we're seeing per building deductibles, wind hail per building. So if we have a $20 million building,
Yeah.
$10 million building, they're impacting you on a deductible for each one, or even worse, a percentage, 1%, 2% per building wind hail deductible. So the property line has become very strained. And then lastly, not as big of issue in the state of Indiana because of the tort limits that most public entities fall under, but the capacity for umbrella, especially with abuse going through the umbrella, is almost non-existent. So these insurance companies, you ask them to attach it $1 million or $5 million umbrella limit, they won't do it. Or they'll price it accordingly because they think if something gets to us, it's going to be 100% loss ratio or 1,000% loss ratio. So those are really the three lines. The general liability, auto liability has been active, and the physical damage, as Greg also touched on. It takes longer for vehicles to get repaired. It's more expensive for vehicles to get repaired, so the auto line's being impacted as well. One day we're going to come here and talk about puppy dogs and lollipops.
I was going to say, this seems like a really good kind of build-up to the good news that's about to come, right?
Yeah, that's unfortunately, Andy, my counterparts here, we do this every day, and it's
Yeah.
not, it's not enjoyable for any of us, I can assure you. We're all ready for that plateau and stability to come back, so. Did we want to get into the proposal at
Yes,
this
please,
point? Okay.
please. Thank you for the background.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll go ahead and direct you to page number 4 of the proposal. I'm going to start with the property line of coverage. You just heard all the good news about it here, so we'll kind of work through. So Federal Insurance Company is Chubb, or what you would refer to as Chubb or know them as. And so you'll see your blanket building and contents there at the $68 million and change. Andy kind of alluded to this, and it's really important in today's market with the wind hail challenges, roof surfacing, theoretically. $25,000 deductible, which is what the city's expiring. This is where we see marketability based on your loss runs, allowing us to offer what's expiring, whereas some entities are experiencing per location deductible, percentage deductible, as he just alluded to. So the city is actually being offered same expiring deductible. That is on a per occurrence basis. The last large event that the city occurred was 2018 from a property standpoint, where we had our big hailstorm. Everyone probably remembers that. Again, if you think about the number of buildings impacted, if it were on a per location at that point in time, the kind of cost the city would have. So Again, this is still on a per occurrence basis at 25,000. The property in the open, which is a schedule of six, as far as quoted is 6737, you see there. And those are items such as stoplights, such as things that are not necessarily at a physical address, lighting, for example. So you see 6737, the actual property in the open schedule is just a touch over 8 million.
Can you tell me what page you're on?
I'm sorry, page 4.
Page 4, okay, that's the page I was on, okay.
So
Where does it describe the property in the open that you were just referring to?
it's going to be the second line down, Mr. Mayor, where you'll see property in the open and then a blanket of 6,737,000. Or
Am I on page 4?
do you have the?
You got the notice.
Can I take a look?
I have the one you handed me.
I think you have the one
Yeah,
from
you-
Friday.
This is the one you handed me this morning.
Give him this copy.
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying,
The packet there,
okay, all right,
There it
okay,
is, Mayor.
okay, all right, thank you. Okay. Now we're on the same page, thank you.
So again, back to the property in the open, 6737. The actual blanket limit is just a touch over 8. Down at the bottom of that page 4, you're going to see property in the open that is not covered on this proposal. From this proposal being produced to Andy and Charlie's conversations with Chubb on the way down on their relationship there, the large piece of that difference is the 1,432 million, which is the stoplights, the 4 stoplights along Main Street that the city now owns and maintains. I think a couple of which are being replaced in the upcoming year. But so those are now going to be included. The pricing won't reflect that when we get to the end, but again, we can give a general sense of where that will land. That's a big piece of a change that Chubb made from renewal
Okay.
to the expiring to the renewal. So that has all been addressed with Chubb at this point. Earthquake is covered up to a $5 million limit, and you can see the deductible is the same as expiring there. There are actually 3 flood classifications, low, moderate, and high. Now, the city does carry what's called NFIP flood policies on specific locations as well. Those would be your higher risk than what you see here. But Chubb does offer flood coverage as well. You can see at the limits and what the deductibles are. That's spelled out further on the next page as well as to which locations fall where. Two changes that there are in deductibles is in regard to discharge of water peril as well as leakage of fire protection peril deductible at $50,000. So, and that is at each location basis. So, Andy, Charlie, do you want to kind of talk through the second of those two as far as what that peril is? The water, discharge of water is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll let Andy discuss.
So that relates, Mayor, to what's called domestic water. It's not flood.
Okay.
It's not storm-driven. It's your own sprinkler breaks, toilet overflowing, goes down to the second floor or third floor or something like that. So domestic water has become more and more, I mean, theoretically, truth of the matter is your property rates can contemplate a major loss every so often. In other words, we talked about what's happening in the rest of the country. There may be a time the city of Madison will have their turn, to have a major loss. Your rates can contemplate that. What these rates can't contemplate is the frequency and the severity that these wind hail situations, the domestic water situations, and they're very expensive and can make an insurance company unprofitable right off the bat. So that's why you're seeing some of these perils break out with a higher deductible or a risk retention position.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the Chubb property offer?
Greg, the monuments section there, is that a deductible the 300,000?
No, that's the limit for those two items, the
Okay.
insurance limitation on it. That being said, that property in the open schedule encompasses a lot, such as the fountain, for example, overlook, those type of items that, again, don't have a physical address generally attached to them and can't be placed elsewhere. So, yeah, those were just pulled out. Those were two, obviously, of the newer items that the city has in its inventory. Does that answer your question, Mr. Carl? Any other questions on the Chubb property? Again, 2 pages down, or behind that one is where you will find the different classifications of the flood coverage, the deductibles that apply to those specific addresses, the 3 different hazard levels they've associated them with.
Thank you. Yeah.
Page number 7, I'll quickly kind of hit on some of their property extensions from Chubb. For example, there's a $500,000 blanket for fine arts that's in this property coverage outside of what we just talked about. So these beautiful Snyders that are on the wall here, for example, would fall into that category. And there's many more that are on that extension as well. Every company is going to have a property extension. Theirs is called the Custom Mark property. Next, page number 8 is going to be additional property coverage, same as the prior. And then you're going to get to page 9, which is your business income protection. And then we get to page 10, which is also Chubb, and this is your equipment floater, also known as your equipment coverage. Per the schedule on file, you have $5,209,000 and some change of scheduled contractors' equipment. The deductible, again, this page is going to change per the conversation with Chubb and where they're going to place those stoplights. Likely, that's going to change our deductible on our equipment
Are
schedule.
the stoplights included in the equipment?
That is where they will be
put it?
included, correct, Andy?
It's gonna be in between, Mayor, in between the inland marine or contractor's equipment or the actual property schedule. One way or the other, we have a commitment from Chubb to pick up those stoplights.
If you think about, we have hundreds of street lights, stop lights, benches, all the things you're talking about that fall in these categories that most people probably wouldn't think about
Yeah.
necessarily being insured, but we've had specific instances where there were accidents, that created lots of damage.
Yeah, a lot of property in the open, its biggest threat or peril is likely automobile, for example. And, not every automobile operator is insured, I can assure you that. And so, that then falls on the city if there is an incident where we cannot pursue that, or the city cannot. So, and so you're right, there's a lot, and just kind of going through the process we take with the city, and again, back to giving the credit to all the department, everyone who's involved in that process. We're always auditing schedule, either at new acquisition of property, periodically, obviously at renewal, with the department head who manages that particular asset. The city has invested in asset reports in the past, and those are always then a leveling point and conversation point as well. So that work never ends, to make sure that we're protecting the city's assets appropriately and as they desire. And so that work, again, as the time and the insurance market changes, that conversation might change a little bit, the considerations that are made, obviously cost being a big factor there, but yeah, that is just kind of, I don't know that we've really talked a lot about the work that goes behind the scenes. Again, I will look at Katrina because she is fantastic and excellent as she works through that, and as well as the city staff also. Any questions on the equipment schedule?
Is this different than vehicles, or are vehicles separate?
It's separate. Vehicles are
Separate,
separate, yes.
Okay.
Some of the highlights for the equipment coverage there on page 11. Then we get to page 12, which is the crime coverage. Now, this is going to cover city employees unless bonded otherwise for multiple different lines of coverage, on-premises theft, in transit, fund transfers, for example. So multiple coverage. This is the same as expiring. Travelers is offering the coverage. They are offering on a 3-year term as well, which we don't see a lot of extended terms being offered in today's environment, as you can imagine, with the changes that are happening. So, any questions before we move to liability?
Is cyber completely separate too?
Cyber is separate,
Separate,
yes.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Page 13, so this is your expiring liability carrier, I think as Andy and I alluded to. Ascot, there's a new insurance carrier behind this market. Ascot Insurance is now the insurer. And from a coverage perspective, their appetite for some of the auto liabilities has changed as far as the general liability, public officials, employment practices liability, and the law enforcement and EBLI, employment benefits. There is no change in what they're offering from expiring outside of the pricing.
Okay.
And just kind of as the city's aware of this, but there are retentions that are carried for the professional liabilities as we describe them. So the public officials liability, employment practices, law enforcement. There is not a deductible or retention, I should say, for the general liability. And actually, the general liability is carrying a $1,000 deductible. So I apologize.
Okay.
If we get to page 14 is when we're going to get into the auto liability with Trident, again, expiring carrier. And you will note a couple notables there towards the bottom of the page. You can kind of read through those bullet points there. But I wanted to note the Aaron's Fox carries a deductible of $1,000 with $1,000. There's a separate deductible carried on both of the fire trucks the city owns and the Seagrave Quint.
Sorry, what page are you on, Greg?
Page 14.
Okay, this page I was on.
The
Okay.
comp and collision deductibles for all other vehicles is at $1,000, with the exception of the 2 fire trucks I noted, as well as on the next page 15, you're going to see a list of some of the larger vehicles that they are requiring a higher deductible, I should say, at $2,500 for comp and collision. And I would also note, just historically, and this is something, auto fleets are typically loss leaders. They still are. They probably always will be. Andy kind of alluded to both sides of that equation. The liability side where, the societal changes that have happened there, as well as the cost of repair and time out of commission. So all those things are driving and will continue to drive that. We have an awful lot of deer in this part of the world, I guess. So that's always something. Now the city has probably been a little more fortunate than some, more cautious than some, maybe as well. So, but the majority of vehicles are going to carry a $1,000 deductible with the exception of those that I pointed out.
The trolley is highlighted here, or it's not?
Trolley is not covered on the Trident policy. They would not accept that exposure, and so it was insured elsewhere.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I think I mentioned the appetite of the carrier and their risk exposure and what they're willing to kind of take on and not. Historically, public entities insure those type of vehicles, and Trident was not interested in that, so we placed it elsewhere to protect the city.
Thank you.
other question? And then we've got your excess, $4 million excess policy on page 15, middle of the page. And you see the underlying coverages that fall underneath that 4 million and run through the umbrella excess.
Thank you.
Next, page 16, if we're moving to selective at this point, you're going to find the property first and then the liability second as we work through that, similar to what we did with your expiring carriers. So you're going to see some different blanket numbers here in the way in which selective offered their property coverage. Blanket building limit, except for the scheduled locations below, is at 50 million, just kind of as a remembering where the blanket was with Chubb, 68 million plus. So they're at 50 million 8 plus. You'll find that gap being made up with those scheduled locations. So they've pulled those locations out of the blanket. So blankets are helpful because they offer flexibility at loss. It gives you that overall blanket of limit of coverage for any one particular location should there be a loss. This is one area, as you can imagine, insurers have done a lot of diligence with the replacement valuations on these types of buildings to make sure values are correct. And so, you know, for example, the city's property values from expiring to renewal are up about 9%. That's for property inflation reasons. That might be because there's a lot of unique property the city owns that a lot of commercial businesses or personally you wouldn't own, such as a water plant and so forth. So very specific in nature to how the cost of those, and the carriers, although we're not an appraisal company, certainly our agency is. Gregory and Pell would I assume say the same thing. I think it's even in their proposal. We have the ability to kind of work up those quotes, but the insurers are the ones paying those. They know what it costs to replace that particular type of structure, building, et cetera. So they've done a lot of work in that, and so that's also been driving a lot of cost to the consumer as they've gotten these insured values to the proper limit of coverage. So again, you're going to see that's a big difference between Selective's property offer and Chubb's, is that they have pulled several locations, and if you read through those, I think we can all identify a lot of the older, higher valued buildings that the city owns.
So
The water tanks, where are they inside there somewhere?
So there's a statement, what we call a statement of value, a whole schedule of property. It includes the building limit as well as the content limit, and that's what makes up your blanket, Mr. Eaglin. So that 68 million is the building and content limit ultimately on that schedule today.
So that's where, it may not be itemized out, but.
And it is
Certainly is.
itemized, it is itemized on the actual full schedule,
Okay.
which is within the policy. And they don't include it here because it'd make the proposal.
Okay.
50, but that's one of those
Sure.
schedules that I was referring to that we do audit almost constantly. It feels like
We've
sometimes.
done a lot of work on those.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of work done on that.
Hey, Greg, where you're at on page 16, where you're starting to begin the conversation with selective, which is option 2. This is an option
This is a property option.
other than Chubb?
Chubb, correct.
Okay,
That's
gotcha.
correct. And when we get to the summary, you'll kind of see there are 3 different
Okay.
quotes as well, so yes. Deductibles at 25,000, pardon me, on an occurrence basis with selective.
Yeah.
The next page, 17, if there weren't any additional questions for Selective's property offer, the inland marine, again, the equipment, you're going to see the 5.2, and then the unscheduled miscellaneous at 500,000 as well. And I failed to mention with Chubb, but they offer the unscheduled limit at 500,000 as well. That's your miscellaneous small tools that picks those up outside of anything that is scheduled over 5,000 in value. And they quoted that at $1,000 deductible
Oh, okay.
for the equipment.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Selective's property or equipment proposal?
No.
Okay.
For me.
So second option here for the liability with Selective is, top third of page 17, you're going to see general liability. I would also make a note, so the city carries through their general liability, healthcare, professional liability, and that is for the first responder program that's in place for the fire department that is city employees. Of course, all the fire departments carry their own separate policies as well to kind of dovetail with that at the time of a loss. But that is included in the general liability with Selective as well. There is no deductible that is being required or offered, I should say, on the general liability with Selective. Police professional, you're going to see the deductible that is being matched with what you carry currently with Trident. And then page number 18 is when we get into public officials. There is a change here from what the current deductible on public officials with Trident is at $10,000, and they are offering it at $25,000 deductible, so it lines up with your other professional liability deductibles. You'll also see the retroactive date based on claims made form at 1/24/92, simply saying coverage would go back and respond to any claim that was made today that actually occurred up to that or back to that date. And then we get to the auto with Selective. You're going to see a comp and collision deductible, so physical damage at $1,000. They're a little more straightforward with their deductible offering, whereas the Aaron's is the only vehicle that has a separate deductible for comp collision at $50. So there isn't that big truck or vehicle breakout like you saw with Trident on their offering. You'll also notice the composite rated vehicles is higher because of the trolley, for example. They're rating that additional vehicle within there, so they are covering the trolley on the auto with Selective. And then the umbrella at $4 million, and you can see the underlying coverages it sits on top of. I've yet to mention it, but for example, the liquor liability for the golf course, in this case, runs through the excess as well. Any questions on the Selective offering for property or liability? I'm afraid to turn around. I don't know if everyone's going to be sleeping or... Okay, this is where you're going to see some property extensions similar to what I referenced with Chubb on page 19, 20, and also 21. And page 22 is where we find the animal mortality policy for the 4 canines, Colt, Cane, Mongo, and Odin, I believe. If I'm mispronouncing, I apologize. This is a policy that's been maintained for several years now. It's through Glencar, which is the same as expiring. And you can see the limit carried on the dogs. The disability and veterinary care, the full mortality policy that's in place. Questions on the mortality policy, animal mortality? Page number 23 is going to...
Greg, real quick, on the canine, have we ever had a claim? Have we ever filed claim for that?
Yeah, we've had a couple claims. Going off of memory, I think we've had some, one of them was ornery and liked to eat some stuff and turned his stomach or had to have some veterinary care. The city's unfortunately, previous to even the mortality policy, and what probably brought this mortality policy to the forefront was public entity insurers generally or historically insure line of duty claims on canines within their policy form, but they don't offer the full mortality, so such as outside of line of duty, veterinary disability that you find in this policy. And there were several claims, and unfortunately there was some things that happened there previous to this policy being taken out, I think that led to that decision being made to purchase this policy. I would tell you that majority of public entities do not carry full mortality policies on their canines. Again, I'm a huge dog lover, so don't take that in the wrong light. Andy, can you kind of speak to that as well?
So you guys got, and this was born about the dog probably 10 years ago that ate its food too fast, stomach flip, passed away. That was not a claim. It was paid for, but it wasn't a claim. So that's why we put this animal mortality policy in place. It's kind of the same type policy we go through Lexington, Kentucky to get it, that the thoroughbreds use down there. To my knowledge, for the counts Charlie and I serve, this is the only true animal mortality policy that we have. All the cities and counties and towns we serve. Most line of duty type incidents are what the public entities insuring against.
That is your question, Mr. Carlo?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Page number 23, we're going to get into the two cyber liability offers. The first of which is going to be HCC Houston Casualty. That is the incumbent and expiring. Both of these carriers are what's called non-admitted, so they're not covered by the Indiana Guarantee. And that's pretty common to find that within the cyber liability marketplace. I'm hesitant to even say this market has stabilized, but I think a lot of the efforts of the public entities, I know the city's taken a lot of precautionary efforts, hired a lot of consultants, has done a lot of work there. Mindy, those applications that we complete don't get shorter each year, obviously, so that just kind of tells you the risks that are involved. We're understanding the risk better as an insurance industry, I believe, and that has kind of hurt the criminals, the bad guys out there, so to speak. So again, that could change at any moment in time, just like the weather, and so we don't get too kind of confident there. But we have seen a little stabilization in that marketplace. Again, for the marketable accounts that are taking the precautions, the multi-factor authentications, and all the firewalls and so forth, IT that needs to be in place to help protect the entity. So I'm going to point out essentially between the two offers, which the second offer is on page 24, the next page, that is going to be with CFC through Lloyd's of London. And I'm going to recommend, or we're going to recommend option number 2, the new carrier CFC. And the reason for that is in retention. Your expiring carrier HCC is requiring a 50% retention, and CFC is requiring a 5% retention. So the cost to the city at time of claim would be significantly less from a retention standpoint. The second piece of that is going to be in regards to the extortion protection. So for HCC, they take your cyber extortion they're down to 1 million versus the majority of coverages are going to fall at 3 million. And you can see the sub-limited for all the different coverages. But with CFC, you're going to see extortion at $3 million, so they're going to keep it at that $3 million limit, again, at a lesser $5,000 retention. So those two things combined, as well as pricing's a little bit, it's about $600 less, it looks like. So CFC, as well as the binding requirements, are a lot less restrictive and challenging for the city to go with CFC. So option 2 on the cyber is what we're going to recommend for those reasons. Questions on the cyber before we move?
Greg, I mean, cyber claims have probably really escalated the last, 5 years or I don't know, give us a little background on the cyber
Sure.
market.
10 years ago, it was in its infancy. It was when we really started offering and seeing the exposure increase. Truthfully, as sometimes is the case with our industry, they didn't understand the risk. I don't know that they could have in its entirety. As with anything, you can't predict the future. COVID really, really changed that landscape where we were forced to work from home unexpectedly, unprotected maybe, all those things that then occurred during that particular point in time. That wasn't the only driver. It was obviously there previous to that, but that certainly changed a lot of things. And so, these cyber policies were handing out $1, $2, $3 million in liability, and the city purchased this policy. I I would say it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago when they took out the first policy for cyber. It might be 9 or 10 because COVID, I always lose a year or two there. But that being said, yeah, the exposure has dramatically changed at the point in time of COVID and the few years following. Again, it's knock on wood, it's stabilized for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I would be very cautious. The second that guard is let down, the cyber criminals are going to find a way in. And we all hear about the cyber breaches for these large corporations almost on the
All the
daily
time.
still. It's not as if it's a rare occurrence. Now, the targets have somewhat changed a little bit. And a lot of the bigger corporations, public entities, higher education, they're really still huge targets, certainly. All of this risk control that was really dove into that from the entities themselves and the insurance companies and all the risk control that went along with it, IT companies, really kind of, pushed back on it, and they found some protections, put protections in place. The cyber criminals, the last couple of years, we're hearing more about it within those small businesses. Those entities or those businesses that don't have the resources or didn't have the focus on that area. So it has evolved, and it will continue to. It's just, it's not going to go away in our lifetime, certainly. We hope we can stabilize it and continue to be essentially kind of where we're at now and continue to find stability.
This has been an area where the city's had to make a pretty sizable investment in its infrastructure, its hardware, computer systems, hiring a third-party IT provider for the systems monitoring. It's been a major investment the last couple of years for us on this front in order to manage the cyber aspects of it and keep our cyber liability costs reasonable.
And I would take that further, even to have the ability to purchase cyber, as far as the requirements, the underwriting requirements, even to obtain those contracts, which the cities maintain, those investments that have been made. And we've been there and we've seen those things. And the costs are definitely high. I think the cost of claim is much higher and what goes on beyond that. But yes, it's definitely, some of these fire coverage, for example, a lot of the general liability, they go back hundreds of years worth of, ability to understand the risk. The cyber has been so quickly evolving that it in such a short period of time, there was a huge correction that had to be made, investment that had to be made on all parties to kind of protect ourselves. I'll let Andy kind of.
Mayor, it followed you into office.
Yeah.
When your first term,
Right.
we had a battleground in Mindy to even secure coverage. That was at the hot button. That was where a lot of public entities got caught flat-footed from the cybersecurity efforts that the cyber underwriters were dictating were best
Yeah.
practices. And credit to the city that you guys recognized that we were able to get coverage. Now it's even better coverage at a lower cost because of the investment the city made. So when you take those cyber offerings, you look at it, you got a $3 million limit. What the city's actually buying there is the vetted services after a cyber incident. My colleague Charlie Votts, a certified cyber insurance consultant. If you guys have an issue, he's going to be after Gardner.
Yeah.
First one call, we're going to get it set up. You got Breach Coach domestically. Mullen Coughlin is one of the preferred breach coaches. They're going to own the claim at that point. Everything that the city does at that point is going to be like a little chink at that $3 million. Breach coach, hourly rate, a forensic adjuster to come in and see where the bad guys got, PR, all these things. If we had to do notification, offer credit monitoring or whatever, all those are going to be taking a chink out of that $3 million. So the way to look at the cyber is these are paying for vetted services after. And if there has to be, the breach coach is going to have an electronic purse, so there's some ransomware type event. The one other thing that I'll say is in your crime policy that Greg went over 10, 12 minutes ago, it's actually a supplement to your cyber. Crime will never pay for a cyber incident, but you saw computer fraud in your crime, you see computer fraud here. If we can drive a claim to your crime policy versus your cyber, we're going to do that.
Okay.
It's better for the city. Those crime underwriters are less risk adverse than the cyber underwriters, but nothing but a success story here to be able to get multiple carriers to quote at a nice limit that, and a reduced premium as well. And that's a credit to the city's investment in the cybersecurity.
Thank you.
Greg, would you say as technology advances, the risk escalates or not?
Theoretically, I would assume so. I mean, it's just about the criminal mind, and they're always looking to be ahead of those that they're trying to protect themselves. And so I think the world moves very, very quickly. It's more of a global atmosphere, obviously, when you're talking about cyber liability, bad guys. And so there's probably a bigger picture there in regards to the federal government, what they might do in the future, and how they, depending upon if we're able to control and insure our own risks as we are today. So I think I don't know if that answers your question, but, and I always say this when it comes to cyber, you can hear Andy, and if you heard Charlie, it'd be similar in nature. When you see these case studies, again, the reason there are all these lines of coverage and protection on this policy today is because that incident occurred. Initially, you didn't see those coverage lines because they didn't know they existed. If that, kind of gives some perspective to how much has changed in such a short period. So,
They were unknown.
correct.
And then as they become known,
Then you see the
then
protections
they get
being
listed.
offered, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other part that Andy referenced, and it's really important, is that you have an instant first line for someone, because minutes matter when that breach occurs, so that they can stop that criminal from obtaining information. And this program, both these programs do, as a matter of fact, but, CFC has an online sign-up that you would do and so forth at inception. And so you have an instant person to go to at any point in time that can get those experts involved in that claim.
Now, does the insurance take into consideration the avenues that the city puts into place to prevent hacking and the
Absolutely.
cybersecurity? Does the insurance company make recommendations?
Yes.
And if the city would, such as follow those recommendations, that would improve maybe the premium, the liability, or?
Absolutely, and I think any and all risk control that the city's taken, which has been extensive over the last several years, that we kind of were talking about, is going to reduce the cost and allow the opportunity to purchase coverage. And if a lot of that work hadn't been done, we're not able to even maintain a contract or put terms in front of the city, or certainly not these terms at this cost. And now that market has kind of found a footing, you're going to see more and more that competitive, where that loss history or lack thereof, or the controls that are in place, start to benefit in a pricing or stability of pricing. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but essentially all that risk control is what allows a contract to be underwritten and put in front of you and to be maintained and at a lesser cost relative to that particular market.
I mean, thinking back, unrelated to the cyber, but several years ago, we had seemed like there was a lot of risk control as far as safe sidewalks, repairing damaged sidewalks, tripping hazards, just incidents like that prevent falls, possible lawsuits, things like that.
Yep.
And I know that there was a big push to correct a lot of those
Absolutely.
deficiencies, I guess, and
Yes, so all the infrastructure work, sidewalks, you'll see that in the loss history over time. Unfortunately, in insurance, there's no instant gratification with really anything we do. It's over a period of time. The risk control we put in today, the policy we put in today, the training we do today then impacts our loss ratio over time. And so, yes, trip hazards, sidewalks, we have a lot of miles of sidewalks, as I know everyone sitting there knows very well. So you will see that impact over time, and that's more on the general liability side. But same thing and same principles apply to the cyber liability and the risk control. And I would say the risk control, we've talked a lot here on cyber liability. That risk control is available. As a matter of fact, Selective would come and do an on-site hire, bring a company in, and I'll let Charlie and Andy talk more when we get to it about what they would provide in that fashion, to kind of dovetail and supplement with everything that's already being done. with all the work behind the scenes, policy procedure.
The biggest aspect of it is if we avoid a claim. I mean, it's not measurable, right? But if we avoid a claim, we don't have a claim, as Greg was saying, we get a better loss run. We can get more carrier partners interested in it. There's always going to be some premium level that the underwriters need to fund the potential claim. But the thing about it, we don't want to give anybody a false sense of security. We had 2 cyber breaches last year on a higher education entity back to back. So they're still out there.
Yeah.
The vast majority of these cyber incidents are happening internally. You know, somebody clicking on something, busy, whatever, not paying attention, you know, not hovering over the link to make sure it matches. The mayor asking for $50,000 wire transfer and gift cards or whatever. People still fall for that stuff. And so education for our employees is key here to avoid that. Take that 3 seconds, you know, don't click on something. If you have any questions, send it to IT. Also, what we found useful for public entities is do some kind of breach cost calculator or a tabletop exercise. So right now we have a cyber incident. What are we doing? Probably calling Greg, Greg's calling Charlie, but being proactive of what the city will do, you know, going deep into discussions of do we pay the ransom or not. We had a large insurance company get ransomwared. They chose not to pay it. It set them back 8 months. Can't pay claims, it's horrendous. But so, you know, having some kind of breach exercise, 3 hours or whatever, we'll all sit around a table, go through a scenario. Okay, what do we do? Who do we call? Who's in charge of what? What's going on? Those have been more proactive risk management. So educating employees and some kind of breach exercise.
You're not going to completely eliminate it,
Not going
so
to-
it's,
Bad guys are always,
yeah.
I mean, you know, it used to be an information grab. Oh, shoot, somebody's got my social security number. Well, big woo. Now, you know, somewhere in this process, they've learned to monetize it. And so as long as that's on the table, we're going to have this threat.
Thank you.
Any other questions on cyber before we get to the page we've all been waiting for? Page number 26, you're going to find the expiring with Trident and Chubb, and then the 3 following columns will be the different proposal or package proposals that we're putting in front of you. We went through. First of which there, right beside, you'll find Trident and Chubb. So again, the expiring carriers and their offer. The middle of the gray boxes, you'll find selective property and casualty option. In the far right is what we're going to make a recommendation for today, which is selective on the liability, which includes your auto, and Chubb on the property. So as we walk down each different line of coverage, it breaks out the pricing for each different line with the different packages we're offering. You're going to find the animal mortality to be the same across all lines. Cyber, you're going to find the incumbent in there, but we're as I mentioned earlier, we're going to recommend the second option, which is at the bottom of the page, and that's the Lloyd's of London CFC. Again, you can see there's a little bit of a premium savings, and I mentioned the coverage benefits previously. You're going to find that the crime is the same across all 3 options. And again, the difference between the 3 is ultimately who has the property and who has the liability. The third column there on the right is what we would recommend. Now, we talked about with the selective, and that is for pricing and coverage reasons, both sides of that. The inland marine, the equipment with Chubb on the property, and what we talked about with the stoplights, for example, and where that falls out, that line of $422,554.43, that number is going to shift a little bit as they work through that property and where that is placed on the policy. But as Andy, I think you mentioned, we could reasonably believe it's going to be a couple thousand, if that.
Okay.
So again, it's going to be flat, if not a little under where your expiring carriers are with, again, the trolley is included in that line, which is not included in the, which is a premium savings from the existing policy in force.
Just a quick question from my perspective. With Selective, since we've not, I don't think we've ever been with them, what is kind of their tendency on assigning attorneys and things like that? Is it similar to what we've had? I've noticed that recently the company's been fairly open to suggestions within reason. And they've gotten mostly local folks from at least New Albany, Jeffersonville, things like that I've had nice experiences with. So I'm just kind of curious on what to expect.
So would love to have your weigh in on that if you have approved panel counsel that you or the city has dealt with. And I can submit those, we can submit those to Selective for their consideration. You know, the thing about Selective is they got a significant branch office in Indianapolis. So they do have a fairly extensive footprint in the state of Indiana. And they would know probably some of the law firms that you've dealt with. And again, love to have that on ahead of time so we can get to them who they would be most interested in working with. Again, dependent on the claim. Public official claims going to be different from a general liability claim. But if you could add that input, happy to take that forward.
Gotcha. I'll get with Greg on that, and I appreciate it.
I guess the mayor didn't like the pricing. I don't like it either, but it's the market that we're in. I'll wait for the mayor, I suppose.
You still have some numbers to work up. How long, what's the time frame on that, Ben? Do you have?
Got about 3 days, right?
Yeah,
About 3 days?
It'll be finalized before effective.
Okay,
But I don't think there's going to be material change.
so you think this price here, give or minus 10,000 one way or the other would be effective, would be good?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be probably more than enough. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to go through some of the options, Wendy.
Thank you, yes.
Just for conversation points as that's kind of decided upon.
Yeah, we are still, we've obviously got some work to do the next 2 or 3 days, looking at some of the policies, some of the deductibles, some of the other coverage. Obviously, our goal is to make that premium
Sure.
reduced, but we're also grateful to have it. I just wanted to say, before Greg moves on some of these options, that I'm very grateful. We have an awesome team in Gardner and Gregory and Arpel. We call on them whenever we're thinking about doing some stupid new thing to find out what our risk is and if we're gonna be able to have coverage for it. And this policy always renews this time of year. We've looked at bumping it back so we have a little bit more time. We're always in a crunch. The insurance companies are trying to worry about January 1st renewals,
Right.
and we're 24th, I think. So we get put to the back of the line, which means we're always crunched in a few weeks, even though Katrina starts nagging me in, October to get applications filled out. It is a long process. It's lots of paperwork, lots of questions that they have, so they can help with the risk side. But these guys, there's been a lot of work going on in the last 2-3 days over a holiday weekend to try and get something to present to you. So I just wanted to say thank you again for the partnership and the help and the expertise.
Well, having that help, in the long run, if you look at, if you had to do a lot of this work and all this research, you're saving the city a lot of money dealing with somebody that you're comfortable with.
They have
and you
their finger
trust
on the
their-
market.
So, to go over just a little bit, over the estimate here, I think is fair to,
And there were a few options that we had at the bottom of the page there I wanted to kind of run through as well. So you'll see the cost of the terrorism insurance. I would not make the recommendation. City carries terrorism on both property and liability at this point, and I wouldn't recommend deleting that coverage in today's world. But you can see the premium that's attached to carrying the terrorism coverage. We offered two auto options. Again, kind of with Selective, because that is who we are recommending on the auto side. Increasing the comp and collision deductibles to $5,000 for all vehicles. There's a $10,000 savings annually. Again, just kind of going back, Selective's offering comp and collision at $1,000 currently, with the exception being the Aaron's fire truck. The math's pretty simple on that, to where we start losing by taking that savings. Auto is a loss leader. I look to hailstorms where we have multiple vehicles damaged potentially, and that's going to add up pretty quickly at $5,000. You're really covering each one of those vehicles.
Well, really just the number of vehicles we have.
Right, you have a large fleet,
doesn't
130.
Enormous risk.
Yeah.
There's a lot of risk there.
Yeah, you do not want to do that.
And we kind of wanted to show, like, normally we kind of creep that up to $2,500 to kind of show you, but you're really not going to see any movement. As you can see, we wanted to kind of, once we landed. The second is auto liability deductible. And Mr. Jenner can kind of, speak to those types of claims. But there's a $10,000 savings to take an auto liability deductible of $10,000. Again,
Yeah.
one claim where you exceed that and your costs have now wiped away the savings, but we wanted to show that as well. Again, with auto being such a volatile line and big exposure for most all public entities, we wanted to show that also.
Doesn't take long to get to $10,000 damage on all.
Not with liability, bodily injury liability, no. No, we've got emergency vehicles out there every day, and, and it's not just the amount of vehicles on the roadways. We've got ice, we've got all kinds. The city's done an amazing job with ice removal, I will say that publicly, because I think they did an amazing job with what we got. But anyway, that aside.
So you're recommending increasing those
I am
deductibles?
I am not necessarily, I think that the savings could be, but it's really not my decision to make. That's the city's risk, with any deductible. And they're not being required to be increased.
Yeah.
But we wanted to show that as a potential option as well.
Current auto liability deductible is what?
$1,000 for comp and collision.
I don't see why you would increase that.
Other than you save $10,000, right?
Yeah, if we don't have two auto losses that exceed that, then
Yeah.
you're winning. But if you do, and again, history tells us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
just
here's the
have a
other part
big
of that is the
fleet.
cost of repair. The amount of times we take a call and an insured says, "Oh, it was a fender bender, I'll take care of it myself." They want to until they see the cost of repair, and fender benders are $3,700, $4,500 now, right? So that's your most basic with all the technology and vehicles and so forth. So most auto claims that are physical damage are going to exceed that. Windshields sometimes are $1,500, $1,800 now, for example. That cost has just rose so high.
The odds of us not having more than one auto liability claim per year are pretty slim.
Particularly given the number of vehicles.
That's
that
right.
you in.
I would agree.
So, the only way you save is if you have one.
Yeah.
You've gone
Yeah.
through everything. I was just gonna, recommend to the board, obviously, we still have some conversations internally that we can have about, some of the pieces of the policies and deductibles and things like that. I think the safest thing to do is if I ask the board to approve an up to amount, and looking at the revised quote, I'd say $425,000. If you can approve up to that amount, we will not go over while we work out these details. And obviously, it's most likely going to be less, but
Yeah.
I think 425 is probably safe, and giving the mayor the approval, the authority to sign on that once we get all those worked out would be my ask.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the select Chubb for 2025 with the mayor's signature once the policy and everything is completed with a top limit of $425,000.
Greg, that's the selective Chubb proposal.
That's correct, yes.
The rating on, do we have a second? We'll open for discussion.
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
second that
okay.
motion.
The rating for Selective and Chubb.
Yep.
Could you talk about that for a second?
Absolutely. So that, you're going to find that on page number 20, actually, I'm sorry, it will be on page 31. So Chubb is A++, highest rating you can achieve in our industry. Glencar, which is your animal mortality, is an A+. Travelers is an A++, again, highest rating you can achieve. CFC, so the cyber carrier, is an A-rated carrier. And Selective Insurance is an A+. So if you can look at Selective, Ascot, which is a new carrier for Trident, our insurance company, is at an A rating. Again, all excellent ratings being offered by all carriers for all lines that we're
Yeah.
offering.
Okay, thank you. Any, yes, sir. Anything else?
Just add.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of leeway on that 425. I would anticipate that property in the open may be $2,500. I mean, they initially quoted us 5,200. I'll get that down. And then, Selective normally, as a part of a package, just like kind of your homeowners, from a liability and property, since we're not putting the property with Selective, we kind of lose that package credit. So that could be another 1,000 or something to that. I can work with underwriting on that, so a little bit more of a leeway.
You want to amend it to 430?
That would be more than enough,
Okay.
I would say, for sure, but I would imagine it'd probably be 426-ish or something like that. I don't want to open runway here, but that 425 just might be cutting it a little close.
Okay, do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, I will then amend my motion to $430,000 with the mayor having the right to sign once the agreement has been reached.
Okay.
And I'll second Carl's amended motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you
Thank you.
all. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Andy and Charlie. Thank you guys for being
Thank you,
here.
audience, too, for bearing through that. Appreciate
And
it.
we'll finalize that this week.
Thank you.
And thank you for keeping the tradition of Smiling Bob.
I don't know. Well, they got you.
Yes, you
Well,
did.
they got
It's not an option.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
It's over here, Mark.
I texted Brian to turn the heat on.
Bring in another log.
Man, well, we do have an
Dog night tonight, isn't it, Joe?
we do have an ordinance that requires that the city fire be tended 24 hours a day for heating purposes. Hey, Bob. Okay, looks like we're moving into PACE. We'll get started. Thank you. Thanks, Katrina. See. While she's teeing up the presentation, do you want to give us an overview of this round, Brenna?
See what you gotta go.
I know. I did ask, Clerk, I did ask Brian to turn the heat on. So, Because it's cold, my hands are cold.
Yeah, it's cold by this window.
Imagine.
Well, while we're getting started here, maybe it's in there, but do you want to give us an overview of the PACE round?
Yes, so, at the PACE meeting, we had, I believe it was 16, applications.
Thank you.
16 applications were seen, and 12 of them passed. And so I have those to present to you today. And then I also have 3 midpoints and I believe 8 finals today as well. So, starting with the applications, 210 West 2nd Street, this is a rehab grant application, and they are planning to tuck point,
Okay,
paint.
question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Can you go in the order in which it's in the package?
I don't know if I have that list.
Do we have an agenda back there? Thank you. That'll help us stay organized.
Okay.
Because the sheet that you've given us is in the order that's in the presentation, that's in the package, I believe. So that will help us follow through.
There we
Reverse. Okay.
Okay.
So, 808 East 2nd, also a rehab grant. Their work is installation of storm windows. That is all they're doing.
Okay.
Next, we have 412 East 3rd. You'll go back towards the front. There you go. So this one is a dilapidated structure, and we do have the letter from Brian in the office. Their 50% match would be worth $13,796. And they are proposing to stabilize the rear basement wall because it is buckling quite severely. They'll be tuck pointing and then replacing the front stairs because they are incredibly steep right now, so they're planning to kind of ease that angle to match the neighbors.
I couldn't read this application because of the handwriting.
It is.
Yeah.
Are they painting the front facade?
I don't know that they're painting the whole front. I think they're painting where they're doing the work, but I don't think the whole color is changing.
That's a concern of mine.
Those are right behind the fire department. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful block of row houses, but again, part of this is investing in these, co-investing, I should say, with the property owners and having the front facade look like it's had work done on it.
From speaking with him, I think he would be agreeable to paint.
Can we make that part of the,
We can condition the approval on
the approval?
the facade being painted.
I mean, make that a stipulation,
I
that
mean, we've talked about this, but
the curb
as you're
appeal,
looking at all of these applications, it's not just responding to the application, but responding to it in a way which is, we'd like to see more done sometimes for the amount of investment the city is making, and the front facade is really important to us as we are distributing, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of PACE funds.
But a lot of the work's gonna be done in the back, but if you don't paint the front, it still looks like it is right now.
Okay.
Curb appeal, like David said.
Next up is 123 Central. This is a rehab grant, and they are proposing to remove the vinyl siding and install LP Smart, and in the time that the siding is off, they're going to put some house wrap on.
I'm sorry, can I just stop for 1 second? So at the 412 East 3rd Street, are you approving the disbursement?
When we go back to do the approvals,
Okay.
but your point is a good one, which is the condition of the approval for 412 East 3rd is painting of the 3rd Street facade.
So if he needs to change his scope of work to include the paint, then would that just come back at the next meeting for approval?
I wouldn't bring it back.
Okay.
We're conditioning the approval and asking for it to be painted.
add it to be added to the
Just as
paperwork.
the
project.
clerk's office needs clarity on when to cut the check. That's the toughest part
Yeah,
for us.
and so that raises another point too, which is, is that going to raise part of the cost of the project?
Most
To
likely.
which it will slightly increase the amount of
Yeah.
the amount of the grant too.
Mhm.
So I would say as we approve this, you'll restructure this final approval. We're not going to be dispersing funds anytime soon, but it does change the amounts a little bit.
Okay.
So when they come in for their first draw, it would be included in that.
Okay.
Okay.
518 Jefferson Street.
Okay, let me catch up with you. 123 Central. I didn't have
Okay,
any-
this is another one.
Now we've got, 518 Jefferson. Okay, talk about 518
So
Jefferson.
518 Jefferson, this is
And as you go through, if you don't mind, let's highlight the fact that we're targeting an area, and we are also, what type of grant it's getting. So we have the rehab, the dilapidated, the dangerous, and the curb appeal. So if we could just be,
so this is
descriptive.
a dilapidated structure.
Okay.
Um,
So the 518 Jefferson Street is a dilapidated structure in the target area.
yes.
Okay.
And their work that they're proposing includes putting some internal supports up so that they can stabilize the brick walls. They'll be tuck pointing on the exterior, painting, and replacing the windows.
This will be a game changer for Jefferson Street. And this one does include the exterior painting and repair of the brick structure.
And the total cost too, I mean, they're investing $201,000 in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's great.
Are the windows, it says Quaker windows, are those wood clad or aluminum clad?
Aluminum clad.
Okay. And is this a vacant structure?
I believe it is. Yeah, it's a Matt Binzer project.
Great, that's a good one.
Okay, next is 309 East Third. So this is a rehab grant. And the work that they're proposing here is void filling, which that is foundation related. Mortar joint repair, some tuck pointing. They'll be replacing the fascia as necessary, but they're planning to keep as much as possible. They'll be painting, sealing, and like the scraping of the paint before they repaint.
So where we talk about paint prep, priming and painting, is that facade?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be careful again, because I just want to keep reiterating that the facade outcomes are really important in the PACE program. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as far as the rehab grant goes, they can only do exterior stuff.
Okay.
Like that. Next is 821 Walnut. So this is another dilapidated structure, and this is in the target area. Or I'm sorry, it is not a dilapidated structure, but it is in the target area.
Okay.
It was previously
I'm shocked, because I thought there was a fire in that building many, many years
There
ago.
was.
So I know
I
that
think it
there was
had
a prior
previous
owner.
who did some work.
It had a
Yeah.
prior owner that
I
we had
believe-
they couldn't really get the project done. I think they probably ended up selling it to these.
I think the
I
windows
believe
are new.
previously it was dilapidated, but no, it no longer is.
Windows are new, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Look like
Well,
that.
yeah, just.
Yes, but they will be replacing the windows that are currently there because they don't fit.
Right, you can see that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
you
So the
can-
ones that are there were just kind of vinyl window placeholders, but they are planning to replace those with appropriate windows.
This building has some beautiful potential with its design and architecture, and it's on North Walnut Street, which is a really important area.
And they do intend to repaint the outside.
Good.
And they're doing some roof work. I believe
They may have already replaced the roof. I saw them down there
Yeah.
when we had that little burst of warmer weather.
So,
Miss that, don't you? I miss the warm weather.
I'm sure you do.
okay.
Hard to play golf when it's snowing on the ground.
215 East Street. This is a rehab grant. The work that they're doing would not equate to the full payout of 7,500, so they are only eligible for 44,1750.
So they're gonna get about half of what they're going to put into it.
Yeah. Their work includes the repair and replacement of their front porch, and that landing, their side door, window trim, fascia, and rafter tails.
Are they repainting? Okay.
That is not part of it.
What's that?
It's that.
Do you have any,
That was not
I
part
mean,
of it.
when you say it's a repair and replacement of the front porch, do they provide a rendering of what it's gonna look like? Is it similar to what's there?
I believe it is similar. I think, if I remember from talking to them, it's been a little while, but I think that the front entrance is kind of unstable right now, so they're planning just to stabilize that and make it usable again.
I think the only way they can exit onto the sidewalk is to leave that stairway the way it is, or move to the south, but you couldn't come straight out because of the pitch. You'd be in the street, so.
Yeah.
It does
That's the one
not
right there on
look
East
like they
Street, goes
provided
down
a
from
rendering
Second.
for that.
About 100 feet.
Have they gone to the historic board yet? Okay.
Project's only gonna take 1 week.
It doesn't seem like a very
So,
extensive
no.
rehab. But unfortunately, this is gonna be one where it's probably gonna look exactly like that it does now, but the front porch is gonna be safer.
Yeah.
Okay,
It don't say anything about paint, so.
no.
Okay, 304 Jefferson Street. This is a rehab grant, and even though it is on Jefferson, it is not part of the target area.
Right.
It's on the other side. And this will be for the removal and the replacement of the windows that are there.
And are these aluminum clad, or what are they putting
I
back in it?
believe, let me see here. The windows are coming from Glass Unlimited, and it looks like they did not.
Windows
state
to match
materials.
306, 308, and 310 Jefferson.
Do you have a description on the
I-
windows?
Reworked window openings to make
looks like
them
they-
ready for window install.
Yeah.
No, it don't say.
The ones that are there are wood right now. But I do not have the material that they are replacing it with.
Can we get an answer to that question? Maybe we could condition it on the fact that it's a design-approved window?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, 1016 West Second. So this is a rehab grant. They are planning to repair and renovate the front porch. And that includes the cover to the front porch. The front steps, replacing some windows, their privacy fence, and the sidewalk.
So I think this property is just west of Craigmont Street, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll be replacing some of the railing and painting.
Are they gonna go back with wood railing on the porch?
I believe that is their plan.
That's their plan.
And
They got nice wrought iron going up the steps there. Nice to have that all across.
Fun fact, I found a litter of kittens on the porch there.
Yeah.
does this one include painting?
Yeah, it
Yes, it
says
does.
painting of the house.
Oh, okay.
Next is 409 East Main. So this is a rehab grant. This is not in the target area. It's near it, but it's not in it. They will be tuck pointing both the house and the chimney as necessary. They'll be removing the shutters on the second story to redo them and then put them back.
It's a
and
really
then-
pretty house.
And they will be painting.
Okay.
Okay, 809 West Second. This is a rehab grant, and they will be painting, and then they will be replacing the windows and bricks as necessary around the windows.
Okay, wood clad, okay.
Doing a lot of work on that house, aren't they? That's
Yeah,
where,
a lot.
where
David Hertz?
Tony
Or
Hertz.
Tony Hertz, yes.
Yeah.
Nice place.
Last one is 210 West Second. This is a rehab. This is actually connected to the house that just burnt
Yeah.
last week or whatever. They will be tuck pointing, painting, and then sanding the mortar for the tuck pointing. And they do have permission from the neighbors to kind of go across their yard to do the work necessary.
Yeah, the other side's the one that burned.
Mr. Wallace's house.
This out here.
Is that it for
That's
the?
it for applications.
So give us the complete rundown relative to what totals you're asking us to approve. Do you have the sheet you can put up there? Do you have the summary sheet?
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, it has changed. I did give
They
each of you a
removed the
copy
purchase.
with the
Okay.
new changes
You should have
today.
an updated sheet.
Or do you have it?
I do not have it
Okay.
with me. I have the old one.
So the request is to approve $109,951 of PACE applications? For 12 applications? Okay. And that would result in a total of $270,000 of project investment, and our ratio there is 41%, so about 1.4 to 1 on the requests. I will move that we approve the applications,
I'll second the mayor's motion.
and I'll approve the applications
Do you stop?
with, I know, I paused, including the facade painting of the home at 412 East Third Street. Now, you second.
I'll have to with it. Yeah. All right, I approve the mayor's motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Comments or questions? Another good round, lots of preservation happening throughout our community. I just want to, we'll go ahead and do a vote, and I'll make another statement. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just want to mention that we do have two targeted areas. The corridor where you've mentioned here, looks like 6 of the 16 applications are in the targeted areas. Would love to see that number higher. And the other targeted area is the Pinehurst area on the hilltop. The curb appeal grant is available all across the city. So we know there's properties on the hilltop as well as downtown that could benefit from the curb appeal. And that leaves us with the rehab, the dilapidated and dangerous structures grants. And two of the 16 are dilapidated. So we appreciate all the, I'm really surprised that the 821 Walnut Street isn't dilapidated. You might want to look into that one. But,
We consider it unsafe, Mayor, just because of the time it's been vacant, but we don't consider it, at least from an unsafe standpoint.
I believe Brian went and did his checklist, and it didn't meet the minimums for it.
love to take a tour of that property. But, so good round, but would love to see more targeted area investments, and maybe perhaps that would require some more reach out our outreach, I guess, to the homes in that area, look and identify them, and it's okay for us to knock on the door and ask a property owner if they have ever considered a project using the PACE grant program.
Some midpoints.
All right, let's move on to midpoints.
Okay, so 723 West Third. This is a Pettit property project. They're
That's
requesting.
gonna be a new house.
Do you have the before?
I do, not in the PowerPoint, but I do have it.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. I'm just saying, before and afters are very important when we're here too, okay?
So they're requesting half of their final disbursement, which will be,
That might be it before.
No, it's not. That's, see, they've already.
So I think duplexes, so they're actually.
I mean, it's a major, it's a major,
Major
it's
project.
a major project.
It's 725.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
This is a major project. I'm really grateful for the work happening here.
so work that has been completed so far, they have rebuilt walls, they've resheeted the exterior, they've straightened some of the walls, and they have put the windows in, and they are now siding it.
It's a new roof also, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's for 723 and 725. So, next one is.
Can I ask
30
a question quickly?
Yeah.
Sorry, because we're gonna disperse these funds today. So the 723rd is for 7,500, but the 725 is also 7,500, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So they'll be getting half of each. So next up is 302 Marine Street. This is Dee Comstock's home. This was a dilapidated structure, and she,
Is that is on the left top, is that the before picture?
no, that's now.
That's now, okay.
That's now.
Okay.
So both of those are now. The top is the front and the bottom is the back. So from the front, it looks mostly finished. From the back, they're still waiting on some siding to get here. But so far, they've replaced the gutters, they covered the back in house wrap, they put siding on as much as they could. They framed and they painted.
Now,
Pre-production.
the enclosed porch, it's hard to tell from here, is that gonna become living space or still gonna be a porch?
I believe it's staying a porch.
Stay a porch.
That might be what it looked like before.
I think that was before.
Yeah.
I remember that house.
Okay. Okay.
And now finals. That was it for midpoints.
Oh, that's it, okay. All right, we can do the midpoint motion. I'll move that we approve the midpoint payments for 723, 725, and 302 as presented.
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Any discussion? Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any non? Thank you. Okay.
So finals. The first one, is there one before that? Is it the before?
Is this the old
Yeah,
church?
okay.
This-
Yes,
So this is a before.
yes, this is
Okay.
the before.
Is this, I was thinking that was Tony and Lisa Hammock.
It is.
It's their son, Tanner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That explains it.
So this was a dilapidated structure. They demoed the interior fully. It's becoming a triplex. So currently they're framing the inside, but as far as the grant goes, they did what they said they would. They repaired some of the masonry on the front. The door that was on the front of the church is now just a window. They filled in the crawl space, they replaced the subfloors, replaced the roof.
And you say you say 3 apartments? Okay, great.
So I guess they're like gonna repaint the whole building?
They will repaint the whole building. Basically, everything that's left on the exterior is waiting for the weather to get warm enough for them to do it.
Because I know they changed the brick on the front to the patio.
Yep.
Yeah, so it will all be one color.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, sorry, it's me again. So total amount of grant awarded is empty? Am I to assume that's the 25,000?
Yeah, it's the 25,000.
Okay, and is it conditional upon painting, or does it get dispersed now?
We can disperse it, but we are making a note that when the weather warms up, they're going to paint it.
Okay.
Yep. Wow, that's a big difference.
Okay, so 701 West, this was also a dilapidated structure. So.
You know, that picture doesn't do it justice, because if you'd seen the inside of that building, it literally was about to collapse.
That's what I'd heard.
There was no usable floors inside it.
So they did replace the floors.
Yes.
So you can walk inside now.
So this is gonna be just one private residence?
Yes.
It's a two-bedroom apartment, I think, inside
Yes.
there.
They put a French drain in underground to help with flooding, to help minimize damage there. They put a concrete porch on the back, and there's like a stoop on the front. It has new siding. There was some painting that was done, new windows, new front door.
Well, okay,
Well, that was my bad. Sorry.
all right.
I do have a final
Different
picture.
property, isn't it? Aren't those two different properties?
Yes, but they're connected.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
I
But
don't have
yes.
an answer on the
Yeah.
first one.
okay.
That was
all
my
right.
bad. I'm
And the
sorry.
other one is like a before.
Yes.
uh,
The other one is the before.
Okay.
So there should be a picture in your packet of the final. It does look drastically different. It is green now. And all work has been completed. Sorry about that.
I have to ask the same question. These are not filled out completely, so total amount of grant awarded,
Be 25,000.
25,000.
He's
They
not
did
had
not
a
do a
midpoint?
midpoint.
He's
No.
not had a midpoint?
No.
That's a nice before picture for
Yeah.
the adjacent brick building that literally was about to fall in until Brian bought it to save it.
Well, and that takes us to our next one, which is 703. You want to hit next?
703,
Those are the afters. So it's the yes.
Before and
oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so that's the after. You saw the before. So for this one, they replaced bricks as necessary. They painted it. They fixed the roof to address a leak that was there. There is also a covered porch on this one. New windows, new exterior doors, full painting, new gutters. It looks really good.
I'm trying to, oh, there it is.
Porch is on the back.
Okay, the pictures were throwing me off.
And if I didn't say it, this was
So
also
the
dilapidated.
before picture on the prior slide is
Yes.
703 West Street.
Correct.
That's 703's West Street. So
Yep.
let's just let it sink in a little bit on how different this structure is now. Wish you had it from the same angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are the pictures that he provided with his work, and I could only get
Okay.
kind of upwards.
Can I make another just observation?
Yeah.
And this has been an ongoing kind of concern.
Yeah.
We need our own photography library,
Yes.
which with very good before and after pictures. Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Wow,
Yeah, that's. a good
Mulberry
one
Street's
here.
making a rebound.
Yeah. That looks real nice.
Okay. 317 Mulberry.
So these are some really significant restorations, the one like West Street you just mentioned, this one on Mulberry. I'm shocked that that's just a rehab, given that what I saw was of the condition of the building.
As far as the rehab grant goes, they tuck pointed, replaced the windows, they put a new front door on it, painted it, scraped it, everything. And then as outside of the grant, it will be apartments.
Okay, they're gonna be
Upstairs.
apartments above. And where
They're-
they're coming in off the alley there?
Yeah, they're still finishing those up.
I saw where they, $335,000 is what they're estimating it costs. It's
Probably
nice
way more than
investment.
that. I have been in the building, that business that's there, had the ribbon cutting last fall. Just a phenomenal restoration. Do you have a picture with the same angle?
I do not.
Okay.
I can get one for you, if you would like.
I'm glad they kept the old door.
Yeah, the storefront there, beautiful. West Mulberry.
Two of these
Oh, here we go.
channels.
Yeah, Jefferson. Okay.
If that's on
1.5
there, I don't-
million.
I just can't read, that's it. Okay. So 301 Jefferson was a dilapidated structure. This is the before, and the picture for this one and the next one are the same because the buildings are connected.
I don't have that one.
301 Jefferson?
Yeah.
301 Jefferson is on the agenda. I have 301 Jefferson. Do you not have it?
I got 301 Jefferson.
It's in our book.
Yeah, it's on the agenda. I don't have the paperwork.
Do you have 221 East Second? That's part of the building also. The front address and the side address.
Well, we can get you we'll get
I
you.
just want to be sure that I've got the grant information award.
So this was a dilapidated structure. They updated the HVAC, repaired all the plumbing, got new lighting, tuck pointed the exterior, painted it. It looks much better. That's from this morning.
A lot of work going on right there in that corner.
Yeah.
Looks good.
So there's not a total grant award amount on this paper. How much is that one?
25,000.
Those have to be filled out, please.
Same for the next one. 221 East Second.
It's 25,000 also.
So this is the back side of the structure.
The Second Street side?
That's this building here.
Hunger's Feed Store.
Is that 25,000 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
They were initially aiming for a February opening. We're hoping that that will stay the case.
Great. Beautiful, high-profile corner. Much-needed restoration of that building. That's
It looks like it'll do
leading
really
to
well.
tremendous investment in the whole corridor. Think about the bookends, that's one end of that arts and entertainment district, and the one down here on the corner of West End, Second Street is the other bookend, and in between, you've got the mural, the sidewalks, the streets, the grocery store, the Chandler, and on and on and on. So our blight elimination and preservation strategies are really working.
So 745 West Third. So for this one, this was only a rehab grant. They scraped and repainted all of the gingerbread, replaced the siding on the porch ceiling.
Okay, can you pause for a second, because I'm not finding 740. Did you guys have 745? Oh, there it is, it's under,
It looks
under,
real nice.
yeah, okay.
Real
Yeah.
good.
So they were at, not the last meeting, but I think it was the one before, for like a scope adjustment. So that was passed, and now they're ready for their final. That is it now.
Beautiful. One house at a time, one block at a time.
So the last one is 614 East Main. Is that in there? Okay, so this is a rehab grant. They were scraping and repainting the first floor windows, and that has been done. Repairing the chimney, tuck pointing, and they replaced the overhead panel by the back door. That was the before. And this is it after. That work is complete.
Beautiful house, too.
And they're not planning to stop there. They're still continuing to work on some of the upper story windows as well.
It's great.
I
That was
just-
my last one.
The paperwork for the sample budget worksheet is not attached to this one. This one just shows sample lumber and supplies. It doesn't show where you came up with the 15,000.
I should have that in here, and I have their contractor's proposal as well.
So the total cost of project was 21,337.50, but the grant is for 15,000, correct?
No, they were confused on that one. It is only 7,500.
So this one is only 7,500.
Correct.
Okay.
If you could get with Shirley and just make sure we're shoring up the documents that she's going to need. I mean, there will be a claim form, obviously, presented to the clerk treasurer's office with the supporting documentation, but
Yeah.
just want
And
to
it
make sure
has-
she has the right.
It has to
right
match what
docs.
they're approving.
Yeah.
And if they're approving 15,000 and your APV shows 7,500, it's going to be an issue.
It's only
We're approving what she's
7,500.
presenting.
7,500.
We'll make a motion and we approve the PACE finals for 1805 Orchard, 701 West Street, 703 West Street, 317 Mulberry, 301 Jefferson, 221 East Second, 745 West Third, and 614 East Main. Those were all great projects with sizable investments by their property owners.
I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just a couple comments, which is the PACE program is already seeing a very robust interest for 2025. And concurrent with that, they're working on the 2024 projects that were outstanding and underway. And I would just say that this is a really vital program for our blight elimination and preservation initiatives. So, again, I was talking about outreach. If we could identify properties that have not taken advantage of the program, that we would benefit from it being in PACE and contributing to the, the landscape on a targeted street in particular, would be great. Also noticed that I think we've made a final distribution for the Cornerstone property on Walnut Street, but it's still fenced up and looks unfinished. So if we could follow up on that one, I think it was at 707 Walnut.
I can look into that.
Again, our goal is when we're making these final disbursements, it's contributed and it's looking like the property's done. I know that one's still fenced up and looks quite unfinished, so if we could talk to them, that would be great about that. Anything else on PACE? Ready to go through a year-end report for planning, preservation, and design, Dewey?
I am ready. My voice is struggling tonight, I apologize. I will say, Mayor, or Board, on the the outreach, I have a list, or I have properties that we can cross-reference with her, and make some outreach, so.
It's a large presentation of pictures. It's still not, I'm still waiting on it to open.
Okay, do that. I'll take a quick break.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good, David?
Can't believe it. You don't know that date, it's.
Get to
The
do this
important
tonight.
ones are back, so if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The important ones are back.
You can read the title of that slide if you'd like.
Hope David doesn't watch this.
The Board of Public Works and say yes. So I'm here to present a year-end overview of what we did last year in planning, preservation, and design. It is extensive. I will be quick and follow your lead if I need to stop and ask some questions, so.
Do not follow Carl's lead.
Don't.
Yes, no.
I'd like a good example.
All right.
We'll wait till Dave gets here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We can do that.
But I will just make a couple announcements, and that is we do have a council meeting tonight, too. So we'll be back into these cold chambers. Hopefully it will warm up by 5:30.
I'm telling him to wait on you, David.
Yeah, Carl was very insistent that we wait on you.
That's right. Don't watch the film.
All right, so this is the annual review for 2024 for the Office of Planning, Preservation, and Design.
Yes, as I was saying, it is extensive, but we will go through all the different aspects of our office, starting with the permitting activity. We have extensive permits that we issue, and probably the most telling here is our building permits. Last year, we issued 182 building permits, 54 of those commercial, and 128 residential, totaling over $26 million. Quite impressive. We don't have breakdowns, demolitions, of course we do. We'll show a couple of examples of each of these. Demolitions, conditional use permits, dumpsters, curb cuts, but yeah, well over 450 permits issued through our office last year.
Yeah, let's hold on that slide for just a second, because it's
Sure,
pretty
please.
significant, and I'll make
Yeah.
some comments along the way.
Yeah,
But,
please.
you know, a couple of years ago, we really started focusing on bringing structure to the excavation process, and that is, when we say excavation, that's cutting into a public right-of-way space, a street or a sidewalk. And here you see 110. So every week across the city, they're doing some excavation, and our new procedures have been intended to help us protect the investment in our streets and sidewalks. So
True. Yes.
468 applications through that department is a huge volume, huge
Huge.
volume.
Yes,
And you'll see as we get through this, there's even more as you look at the other department activity.
exactly. Yep. All right, just some examples of demolitions that were done this year. Familiar with this house on Lafayette Street? That's okay, Brennan, go ahead. And
Do-
then,
Can you go back?
yep,
I mean,
sure.
that's the one on Lafayette, right? Do you have a,
So I know you were asking about before and afters. I don't have, on the demos I just chose to do, this is
okay,
what we did.
okay, fine.
Okay, go ahead. That would be the rear side of 705 Walnut Street.
It was very dilapidated, and very dangerous on the backside of that property.
Yes. And this is the 1205 Walnut, or 1207 Walnut, I believe
Yep.
it is, down by the city garage, which is now leveled.
That was demoed by the owners, right? Property owners?
Actually, both of those.
All three.
All three were.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's no
Yeah.
city expense on any of it.
I'm not aware we've ordered any demolitions since I've been mayor. We've approved them, but not ordered them, except at Moody Park where we ordered the removal of the dilapidated trailers.
Right.
So,
And maybe we have not ordered 755, the alleyway. We didn't.
Nope.
Just,
we approved it.
we approved it. We haven't
It took
ordered it.
years to get done, or
Yeah.
about to get done, but
I did a year review. My first day here was January 3rd, 2022. So I've kept this as a year-over-year slide. You can see last year we really just added one case over the previous year. The biggest difference is, and I think it's the way I see things, there's trash and then there's unclean premises. And I've tried to make, in the slides that come, I've tried to show you the difference in what I'm seeing there. Okay, Brennan. So this is an unclean, disorderly premises, right? I mean, you could say there's trash there too, but and that's just one picture of 35 that I took.
Yeah.
One particular address. Okay, Brennan. Of course, I continue to see abandoned, disused vehicles. I do have now the authority to work on the streets as well as the police department, so that number I expect to rise over this year. Okay, Brennan? So the picture on the top right is more of what I'm saying is a trash issue, literally trash.
it's like that a lot. The one on the right is like that a lot.
Yep. And
But
then,
now that we have our standardized containers, hopefully less so.
yeah, absolutely. And I see furniture, although that seems to be getting better. I see furniture all the time that's there without permits or, permits.
Stickers.
And then grass and weeds is always an issue.
What neighborhood is the grass?
That was
That's right at the bottom of
Dugan Hollow?
Dugan Hollow.
Okay.
Yeah, right before you get to East Street. All right, unsafe structures. Again, going back to the day I started, there was some identification of unsafe structures before I took on the full-time role here. But since January of 2022, we've identified 181 cases of unsafe structures. 104 of those have now been abated, or 58%. We still have 77 current cases, but of those, so there are different classifications of unsafe, and one of those is simply that it's been vacant for 6 months or longer. 54 of the 77 cases that are currently active, we now consider simply vacant or abandoned. They can still be considered unsafe under the unsafe building law, but we're working on things of that. So 23 really remain unsafe, and we're in the process now. Building inspector will be recertifying, re-inspecting those every year to make sure that they're still considered unsafe. Okay, Brenna. Examples of unsafe structures. Got the addresses here. You wouldn't, I think we've spoke about this before, you wouldn't think, looking at the front facade of that building, that this is what it looks like behind. Next one, Brenna. I mean, it's just a completely different building on the backside.
That's a big home, one nice home.
It's a beautiful
It is. the first
property,
side.
it's just been let go for decades.
Yeah, we did get, so one side of that, the porch, actually, you can't quite see it, but he did abate, that was about to fall, so the owner did abate that for us. Again, it's vacant and abandoned. I mean, although we are in touch with the owner, we
Yeah.
have been. So,
Then,
I don't think there's been water at that property for how many, was it 20 years?
2005, maybe?
20 years?
Is that a out-of-town owner or local?
Part-time in Florida, part-time here. So, yes and no. This is one of the few inhabited unsafe structures, 776 West Third. We're familiar with this property. Okay, Brennan. We have done, this is uninhabited on the hill. We have done work to this now that we have sealed it, secured it, so we consider it again, it's unsafe because of the length of time that it's been vacant, but it probably removed to the vacant and abandoned properties.
Family's still in touch with you on that, or just hard to get?
Say that again.
Are the families, it's in touch with you on the one on Hendricks, or
See,
hard to talk to?
it's hit and miss. I mean, there was a time when we were in conversation, and yes, we want to do this, and now it's avoidance.
Okay.
So, 921 Walnut, still considered unsafe. It is uninhabited. It looks even worse than that. That's probably not the worst picture I have.
That's the
No,
tarps on.
It's got a big tarp on it, looks horrible.
Yep.
Look, I mean, really, what is the plan? Because, a hanging blue tarp that blows off every now and then is horrible for that neighborhood as we're trying to bring it back. I mean, what it needs to be repaired or demolished.
We agree. We agree. We've spoke of this property as well, another inhabited unsafe structure, tarp for the roof. Okay, Brenna. Just some more pictures.
Dewey?
Yes, sir,
Can I ask a quick question?
of course.
In your conversations with these owners of these properties, such as Jefferson Street and Walnut Street, do the property owners ever talk about maybe selling those properties? I mean, do they
Do they have a plan?
do they ever relate any information to you about what their plan is for these properties? I mean, they're just sitting there empty, they're not income producing, they're paying taxes.
Not much.
And, yeah, not much. But, I mean, do they ever express, maybe, I'd like to sell this property, but, I haven't contacted a realtor or anything. Do they ever express any information to you?
Any desire to do anything?
Yeah.
Very rarely. So we bring up pace and we bring up the other things, and we're going to go through that here in a minute, what success we have had with that. But, and I would never make an excuse, but it's the 90% say they're going to do something, they do something, then there's the 10%, whatever it is. And so very rarely. And it falls upon me and the building inspector, and we will take responsibility for that. The 23 that we consider unsafe at this point, we need to have plans on. If you don't have a plan, then we're going to come to you and we'll execute the plan. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And so hang in there with us on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, PACE grants. Brenna just went through that. I may ask her to decipher some of these numbers, but they're pretty telling as well. Total money spent by the city and county, you can see the numbers there versus by owner investment. The mayor had mentioned on this round of PACE grants, the ratio. I think that ratio is more what we're looking for.
So that's 781, and that, again, maybe in the future put a total there, right? So we're looking at,
That's my mistake.
sorry, about, 4.5 million or so, total investment through the PACE program with almost an 8-to-1 ratio relative to our grants. And then, the round we just approved was, 1.4-to-1, whereas that's 7.8-to-1. So it's a fraction of the average level of investment, which I was just talking about. Maybe we're cycling through, a lot of the big opportunities, and there's just a few of them left, but let's try to extract the value out of it and get the PACE program involved in them.
Absolutely. And then there's further breakdown, number of applications that were submitted last year versus approved. I do think in a slide to come, we have staff approval versus board approval. And then you see the target area. We've talked about the target area. That's, again, this is 2024, so. Okay. This didn't come out the way I like. Basically, the private investment far is greater than.
Can't read
Yeah.
the legends are,
This would be owner 88%,
okay,
city 11, county 1%.
Okay.
My mistakes on that.
no problem.
Okay. All right, some before and after PACE grant projects. Mayor had some hand in this. He got some of these
West
pictures. Yeah, this is down on
Mulberry, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Mulberry Street, probably
Mulberry.
this 500 block. 500 block down there. Walnut Street, 308.
Burned out.
Yeah, both of
maybe.
those were burned out.
This is the home we were just talking about, 705. You wouldn't, the facade has come a long way on that. The back still has work to do. And then the 600 block of Walnut Street as well.
Yep.
So,
Nice home, though.
all right, some zoning issues that we've been finding in the department really fall into three categories. Either storage containers on private property, the big, like we got in Michigan earlier in the year, or off-site signage, so signage that is somewhere other than where the business is, and then people living in campers or RVs on private property. Those are really the biggest issues that I'm seeing, but the zoning ordinance is immense, and we'll get better at that, okay? So within we talked about the PACE stuff. Within our office, we have other boards, Plan Commission, BZA, and the Historic District Board of Review. Thank you so much. We're going to go through some of that and what happened with those boards this year. Kind of hard to read, but the Planning Commission deals with amending plats and setbacks and parking and rezoning. 79 applications were taken last year. I didn't break it down by which. This is just kind of a high overview. The BZA dealt with 107 applications, conditional use permits. And then the HDBR deals with certificates of appropriateness, 119 applications. That's where the staff approval and board approval was. I apologize.
So on the BZA, there's conditional use and variance from standards. Do you know, was there any of those?
There were variants from standards.
Okay.
I did not include that.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it part of the 107, or was it the 107 just conditional uses?
Just conditional use
Okay,
was 107, so it's greater than that.
The variance is going to be a small number.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a new one to talk about because there hasn't really been a proactive, organized stormwater MS4 plan for a very long time. So the last couple of years, we've been really working on that. So turn it over to you.
So let's, MS4 defined, you think of stormwater, it's kind of a misleading title because MS4 deals with actually the quality of water, not necessarily the quantity of water. So we're dealing with illicit discharges that get into our stormwater systems, grass and weeds or oils or different things of that nature. So think of your stormwater. My role as your MS4 is dealing with the quality of water. I had 219 cases or complaints received last year. 95% of those were things on private property. We did get the stormwater ordinance passed last year, it was adopted. I did take some training in order to conduct the construction and post-construction inspections that happen here in the city. We did have an IDEM audit that went well. There were some minor findings, but we implemented those recommendations that they wanted us to, or abated what we needed to. There was just one major finding. Okay? So these are examples of infrastructure as well as what I consider an illicit discharge. The picture on the left is actually cooking oil that was dumped on the sidewalk in a pathway. The bottom right picture is paint that was dumped down a storm drain on West Main Street. And then, it's hard to tell, but that's on Green Road near the park. That hole's probably 5 foot deep.
The one on the top right-hand corner?
Top right-hand
Wow.
corner. Yeah.
So did we fix those? or-
We've got, the one on the right we did. In fact, by the time we had the contractor cleaning that stuff up, I mean, the damage was done at that
Yeah.
point, but he still did that. The one on the top right has not been completed yet, no. Okay, Mindy? And here's another couple examples of illicit discharge. The one on the left is something you might find when you're smoking meats or cooking meats. It happens at Riverfest. This is on the east end of town.
Could
But
that
that's-
happen?
Is this the Main Street property?
Yes.
The one that, so you probably have a picture, you could put all those sidewalk obstructions in there, but that's Main Street,
The one on the
On the
left is
left.
Main Street.
okay?
Yep. I took a picture of the one on the right. It's out of the MS4 jurisdiction. It's out of city limits barely, but so when we talk about construction, so we're gonna have a bunch of construction happening on the Sunrise Crossing site soon. And we want to try and eliminate what's happening there, because eventually that will make it, I mean,
It's illegal dumping.
essentially, yes. I mean, you can't eliminate something like that. Even oil from cars, but the MS4 seeks to mitigate, to lessen the impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mindy. I left the Moody Park timeline in there. I don't know that we need to go through that. If the mayor has something more to say.
If Joe was here, he could do that. That, basically, you see where if you go to the next page, the judge denied the motion for summary judgment, and they are appealing that.
Okay.
And that you can see again. Go back to the start. So this is January 2025. The flooding occurred in 2021, and the stop work orders were served almost 2 years ago.
These pictures we've seen before. I just left them in there. Okay, Mindy. Okay. Let's end on a good note. So these are just some examples before and after of projects that were completed in 2024. Wood Street is up
Wow, big difference.
near the railroad tracks and
Just south of the junior high, that area?
Well,
south of the
lake
high school.
is over on the right of that, south of that property.
Oh, okay.
And the railroad tracks
Yeah.
there on Bond Avenue.
Yes.
If you didn't turn left, going across the railroad tracks, you're running right into that house.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep.
Okay, you'd
Yep.
be in the garage.
That was amazing transformation. This is Ferry Street down near the campground, before and after.
Very nice.
Really like that. Michigan Road, just as you get to the top of the hill on the right-hand side. The address is Michigan Road, but it's actually maybe Dell Street? Dell Street. And then we got that removed. And then this is 308 Elm Street. Those pictures were taken
That was a fire.
Great. That
after the
was a
fire.
total loss on the fire, right?
Yep, that went down, that was also demoed by the property owner, brought down to the foundation. And
That
now
was part of
there's,
our PACE program too.
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah,
And there's the finished, taking this
in
morning.
progress. That looks great.
Yeah.
That's what you want, rather than having a burned-up structure sit on a site for 10 or more years like we've experienced before.
Yes. That is our presentation.
Good job.
Thank you.
Lots of volume and effort and more to come, more to do,
More to do.
a lot more to do.
Good progress.
It's great progress.
Well-
I mean, and this is, so you didn't have the year over year in the slide in there, did you? Did you, of the nuisance, I'm sorry, did you have the nuisance case slide in there with the year over year?
Yes,
So,
Yeah.
so now you've been here, is it 3 years?
3 years.
And over the 3 years, how many cases?
1,300,
1,300.
give or take.
Wow.
I'll give you an exact number, but yeah, 1,300 cases. 600 cases just last year, including the stormwater stuff. A lot of data, a lot of investigating. But what I'd like to do, and building inspector, we've spoken, I hope we can come each Board of Public Works, if not just once a month for sure.
Yep.
Working on the plans for the 23, he being the building inspector, has to recertify that they are unsafe, but then we will work to get plans on all of those. And move.
And that's what's made the difference, is having a plan, and having dedicated resources, having good policies, and we're still under the policy development stage.
Agreed, yeah.
But to keep up the good work, the whole department has a role to play in all the activity you saw presented here today.
Yes.
Any
Absolutely.
questions for Dewey? Thank you, Dewey.
Thank you, guys.
Then you're going to redo this presentation tonight at council?
Yep.
Under mayor's comments, I just want to mention, Major is already gone. We're also working on some updates for the Madison Police Department SOPs. So beginning in the February meeting, there'll be a handful of those presented at a time. Jeff Renierson, the major, the chief, they're working with a new service that we've enlisted under Lexipol in updating our policies. And as you heard the presentation on insurance today, we have a lot of, potential liability through law enforcement activity. And it's extremely important that we have up-to-date best practices represented in our policies. We do have the council meeting tonight, and I just want to ask everybody to just be cautious of the weather. The warming shelter is open again tonight. Thank you, Dave Adams. Thank you, Salvation Army, and all the volunteers there who are working literally all night long in order to provide shelter for those in need during these frigid temperatures. I will just lastly mention that I think we originally were scheduling a groundbreaking for the residents at Sunrise Crossing. That's been postponed until we get through the cold and snowy weather, but we'll announce a new date on that.
When the ground unfreezes.
You can't put a shovel in it, can you? So that'll happen, later. I'll stop there. Board, do you have anything else to add before we adjourn? It's been a long meeting. Appreciate everyone's patience.
I've noticed, that I think it's just that we've been overlooked, but there's still a lot of no parking event signs down there around the Fairfield Inn on East Street.
We didn't put those there. That would have been an event, but
They're
it
all the way
sounds,
over on East Street. I mean, it's a block away.
I think
like they
those
need to
were
be
placed for the Preservation Conference back in
oh
October.
wow, they left town? And they left town?
Okay.
So,
Anyway, just
yeah.
wanted to bring it to your attention.
Just pick them up while you're down there, Carl.
The snow is 3 foot deep. That's ice.
I'll get them for you, Carl.
Fair weather, Carl.
I'll get them for you.
Not good in May.
I did want to mention, they should be breaking ground at Sunrise, moving dirt the end of this week.
We'll have the groundbreaking, but you did have the pre-construction meeting, right?
Oh, what was that?
At Sunrise Crossing. They're continuing to work. We're just not scheduling the groundbreaking.
True.
Heavy equipment will go through.
Unofficially
That
breaking ground.
Board, anything else to add?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I guess I should ask before, any public comments? Sorry about that.
Sorry,
Any public comments?
Sorry, public.
All right, thanks, everybody. Wow, that was a long one. You guys earned every penny of your per diem today. Wow, Bob, your back probably hurts from sitting so long for that long meeting. I took 2 breaks.